What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and yes, 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 yes. I'm very excited that this season ended on a high note. In case you couldn't tell, this is the season finale of Bone Season 11, The Nightmare and the Nightmare, and yeah, it was finally good. Like the final episode is the best of the season, and followed closely by the first two episodes with Booth, and then after that, it just takes a nosedive. But yeah, I mean, the season finale is exactly what I was hoping for. You've got the puppeteer, or whoever you want to call him. You've got him returning. Um, you've got this intense setup for everything. You've got them slowly finding out that this guy is kind of messing with them. They're finding different, evidence that conflicts with each other, and realizing that he's sort of the main villain is sort of messing with it. So let's just go through it step by step. And in case you haven't seen it for some reason and you're watching this review, there are spoilers ahead. So yeah, click away if you don't want spoilers. So we start off. Brennan is looking over this charred body with Angela and Hodgins. I don't know if it's the camera angles. I don't know if it was the way that Angela and Hodgins were talking. I don't know. I don't know why, but for some reason, as we're watching this, I'm thinking, this is a nightmare sequence. This is not the way they're zoomed in on that dead body right now. He's about to rah and try to scare us. No, okay, yeah, he did. I still jumped a little. Um, so we realize that Brennan's been having these nightmares. She's sort of out of nowhere, and you're kind of wondering why this didn't happen sooner. Like we're only learning about this now. That is my only issue. That is my only problem with this episode, is that these nightmares sort of start now. And they talk about it like she's been having them for a while. Well, why not show us that? Maybe they just decided to write it in for this episode, but why not show us these nightmares? From what they say, it sounds like it started whenever they first heard about the puppeteer. So why didn't the nightmares start then? Why haven't we been seeing these nightmares throughout the episodes that were in between? I think it's just sort of lazy writing. Like they didn't think about it until this episode, so it's just like, oh, we'll throw them in now, and now it'll make sense. But I really wish they'd been more clever with it and really spread out these nightmare sequences, because that would have been phenomenal. She's having these nightmares. We're kind of like, what's going on as we're watching these episodes? It doesn't seem to connect with what's going on, and all of a sudden we get to this episode, and now it all sort of connects. Like all of the nightmares she's been having. Oh, now I get it. This is what's been going on. The puppeteer. So, really wish that would have been handled better. However, it still fits within this episode, so it still sort of works. We move on. We find out this woman has been murdered. She's dressed in Brennan's clothes that she sold a while ago, and it's kind of like, that's really creepy. Hey, those look like my clothes. Oh, here's the sales tag from where you sold them. They are my clothes. That's weird. So we find out about this woman. We find out that her husband tells them she's been seeing this psychiatrist, and from the very beginning, I'm just thinking this guy's done it. He's the one. It just, the way he talks, the way that Brendan talks to him, it just seemed like they were setting it up for he did it. It's all him. He's the one. He's the one that done it. And it's, for a while, it kind of felt that way. They brought in this little puppet master guy who apparently had a rap sheet before, and I'm just like, okay, so here is obvious fall guy number one. Like the one that just everybody so suspects him that it's just like, it's obviously not him. So we sort of find out that he's been actually renting out his basement to the puppeteer. So that's a nice little tidbit. And then we ultimately start to, Brennan is having more dreams. She's actually talking to the guy about it. Like the psychiatrist. She's talking to him about it, running him through all these dreams. He's sort of trying to help her figure out about it. And I'm just like, this just seems like it's setting up for him to be the bad guy. It seems like that's what's going on. And Booth comes to the same conclusion. As they're, he and Aubrey are sitting in his office. It's dark. It's raining. They're just sort of sitting there trying to figure stuff out. Booth finally sees the connection that she was killed. The woman was killed, and now Brennan is seeing her psychiatrist because of these dreams, because of these nightmares, because this woman apparently was having the same. So it felt like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, he tells her that this woman's having nightmares just so that she thinks, okay, he knows what he's talking about. I'll go to him. Now he's got her in his clutches. But as she starts to sort of go through the dream sequence, it all starts to connect for me in particular. I'm just like, wait a minute. Burned hands on Wendell, old wounds, and it was like connecting the dots. And this is by far my favorite part of this episode because of how you can actually sort of figure it out for yourself. They give you all of the clues. The dreams have given you the clues. Can you figure it out before they figure it out? And ultimately, they do. They think about what Brennan was dreaming. They think about all of the clues that's been handed to them, and they finally figure out who it is. But just by watching Brennan's dreams, they're feeding you the clues. Very subtly at times, but they're feeding you the clues. And it wasn't until she was sitting there thinking about Wendell with the burned hands, I was thinking, burned hands? Wait a minute! Yes! And at the time, I was still thinking, okay, so the psychiatrist still could have done it, though, because it still feels like they're setting up for that, so why is this involved with that other thing? And then Booth comes in and sort of arrests him, and I'm like, wait a minute, maybe not. Maybe they actually made it seem so obvious that it was this guy that it actually was not him. They don't ever do that. Like, it came as sort of a shock for me. Because normally, if they're setting up so much for one guy to be the bad guy, most of the time it's him. I don't want to say that they're setting up for him to be the bad guy, but it's a normal guy who seems like he's not really a serial killer, and then all of a sudden, at one point, they just sort of start pushing the concept a little bit, like, oh, it's actually this guy over here who's a bit more of a suspect. Oh, just told you it's this guy. I don't know, normally they're not this clever with it. Normally, it's like, it's so not obvious that it's one guy that it ends up being him. And it's sort of how I felt about the psychiatrist. I felt like they were trying so hard to make us think, oh, it's not him, that it would end up being him. And ultimately, it worked the opposite. They tried so hard to make us think it wasn't him that we thought it was him, only for it to not be him. I like that. Maybe that's not what they intended. Maybe that's just my brain overthinking it. But it did sort of change it up a little bit. It didn't go through the stereotypical formula for Bones. So that was really nice. And ultimately, after they questioned the psychiatrist, Bones is at the office. Apparently, she has sent out an email to all the other people at the Jeffersonian saying, close up the lab, meet me at whatever. And she didn't send out the email, and for some reason that doesn't raise any alarms on anybody. Like, wait, you're saying you didn't send the email? Guys, we need to get back to the lab right now. Something's wrong. No, they're just like, oh, you were probably just so sleep deprived you forgot about it. And ultimately, the bad guy comes into the room. She doesn't immediately say his name just so we have an epic reveal later. But at this point, if you don't know who it is, it's like you either haven't seen the show for more than this season, you haven't seen some of the first few seasons, or you're just not piecing it together yet. Because at that point, as soon as she has that look on her face, like, holy crap, it's you, I'm thinking, I know who it is now. At first, all the little pieces and clues came together. I was like, it could be that guy. As soon as she had that look on her face, I was just like, I know who it is. It's so clear now. And she only doesn't say his name just in case anybody hasn't figured it out yet. We're going to save that reveal for later. Well, everybody comes into the office. They're all, talking. They're piecing all the clues together. They got this big board with all of it together. They've got Brennan's dream notes. And Booth finally realizes, as soon as they say Wendell, she was dreaming about Wendell with his burned hands, he starts to realize, wait, it means somebody who used to work here. He sprints out, gets in his FBI car, drives to the psychiatric hospital where Zach was staying at, bursts in. It's like, I want to see him now. And the nurse is like, he's asleep. He's like, I'm seeing him now. Runs in, like, closes the door behind him, runs down to his room and just opens it up, pulls back the covers. Books. Just a ton of books. And then we cut to Brennan waking up in a dark room. She's like, Zach? And Zach Addy pops his head out of the darkness, looking very old, by the way. Like, whenever he was arrested at first, he looked like a kid. And I know it's been several years, like, I want to say 8 or 7, something like that. But now he looks like he's older than Brennan. I'm just like, wait a minute, what? That's weird. Anyway, but yeah, Zach Addy has returned. He's the main bad guy. I love that twist. I love it. It's brilliant. It's great to see him brought back because the show hardly does that. It's so nice to see that we're tapping into the past a little bit and bringing back somebody from back there. You know, it's been so frustrating going through this season and just nothing connecting at all. You know, we have no connections. We had that one episode where they were making a movie, and at one point they brought up some of the past, you know, like Zach Addy, like Vincent Nigel Murray. We brought up some of that, and I'm just like, see, that's what's been missing. We haven't had any connections at all. We've just been sort of, oh, here's a new case, here's a new case, here's a new case, here's a new case. Everything's in the present. We're not talking about what's happened. It's like none of that stuff in the past happened. Now, with this final episode, we finally are returning to the past. You know, like, finally. It's taken so long. So, yeah, I love the fact that he's back. I love the fact that we are going back there. Hopefully we sort of get to find out what happened, because this does raise a few questions. One, how is he sneaking out of the psychiatric hospital without anybody noticing and doing all of this stuff? Two, when did he become an actual serial killer? Because when he was arrested, I can't remember. I think he said he did kill one guy for the I think the Gormagon, I think was his name. He was helping out another serial killer. It was because he was very impressionable. You know, the Gormagon was very threatening. It was very scary for him, so he just sort of went along with it. He wasn't really a serial killer. He wasn't really crazy. He wasn't really a murderer. And that's sort of what, you know, we had one more episode with him after he was arrested, after he was taken to the psychiatric hospital, where, you know, he helped out with a case because they needed his help with something. When he was talking to Sweets at the end of that episode, he made it very clear that he wasn't really crazy. He just didn't want to end up in jail because he knew he wouldn't survive there. You know, so he made it seem like he was crazy so he could stay in the psychiatric hospital, which is much easier for him. It makes me wonder, when did he become a serial killer? You know, at what point, obviously that was several years ago, but at what point did they sort of stop visiting him and he decided, you know what, screw this, you know, if so, then why did he start killing these other victims before he started targeting, you know, Dr. Brennan and the Jeffersonian? Obviously he had sort of like Brennan was his teacher, and he sort of had like a teacher complex with her, like he, you know, admired her because of that. So I know that's why he's fixated on her now, but why did it take that one case where she showed up for him to go, oh yeah, I remember her? You know, did they stop visiting him, and so now he hates them for it? Why did he start killing? You know, at what point did he realize, hey, I like killing? Hopefully they explain it well, because right now I'm sort of thinking this doesn't make sense. At the same time, I love the fact that he's back, so it's a mixed bag for me. You know, I want to love the fact that he is back in the show, even if that's a serial killer, but at the same time, my logical brain is asking questions like, why is he killing now? What caused that? When did he become a serial killer? Maybe he's not. Maybe he's just involved somehow, and I don't know. I couldn't imagine that was it. But anyway, long story short, this episode definitely was much, much, much better. It was not necessarily perfect, but it was a good episode. It was, dare I say, almost a great episode. And the season hasn't had any of those. I did say the Booth episodes were good. They were enjoyable. They were exciting. There was a lot to enjoy about it, but they weren't necessarily great. There were still a lot of moments where I'm questioning stuff. The moment where at the end of all of this, after Booth has gone along with all these people, he just ends up, oh, okay, you're good. You don't go to jail. That was sort of strange for me. So it did have its problems, but it was still really exciting. The action was there. The acting was really good. The case itself was very interesting, and the emotion was all there. And then for the rest of the season, things just really took a turn for downhill. It just I don't know what happened. I don't know why the writers became so lazy. I don't know why the cases suck so much. But it just became such a long and hard season to get through because all of the cases were boring. All of the cases were not interesting. They were all by a formula. You figured it out within the first 5 seconds of the episode. The personal lives were really frustrating to deal with because it was all so stupid. Nothing exciting was happening. Nothing emotional was happening. It was all just, oh, Booth and Brennan, what are they fighting about this episode? Oh, they're fighting about whether they should tell Christine about the Tooth Fairy. Oh, they're fighting about whether they should get a TV in their bedroom. Oh, they're fighting about whether or not Brennan should watch hockey with Booth. Nothing emotional happened with them until this final episode, this season. Even with Booth's brother, that was the most that happened with them this season, and then it just stopped there. So that's one thing that really picked up in this episode. A lot more emotion, personal life stuff involved. Hodgins had to deal with being blown up and then paralyzed, which in this episode, I didn't talk about that. In this episode, he's dealing with a lot of pain because of, there's a possibility that his legs might be getting their feeling back, but with that comes a lot of pain. And the doctor's saying it may not even be that. It may just be phantom pain, that he's just experiencing because his legs aren't there anymore. So it's really emotional right now for him. Like at one point he drops his beakers filled with liquid because of how bad the pain is. And you can tell like he wants to soldier through it, but at the same time everybody's now worried about him. Like, you don't have to push through this. You can take your pain meds. He's like, no. It's okay. The pain means it's coming back. And he's very hopeful, despite the fact that it may not be coming back at all. So, it's so back and forth. It's kind of like, at first it was frustrating watching him being all mopey and pouty, and then it was kind of frustrating watching him try to be the opposite, trying to, oh, I'm so sorry for all of this, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, blah, blah, blah. And then he finally came back, and he became this nice, same old Hodgins. It was kind of funny because I've been asking for change for so long, and yet when it finally did change, I was asking for it to go back. So, yeah. And ultimately, it ended very well with him. He came back, he became the same old Hodgins, dealing with his paralysis. So it's nice to see that. Everybody else sort of, their personal lives throughout the season were okay. Some of them started dating. Aubrey and Jessica are starting a little relationship. Daisy's back in the Jeffersonian working, trying to take care of, Sweet's baby. It was overall just a fairly bad season. All the personal life stuff just sort of wasn't there or was stupid. It never really felt needed in an episode. It never felt like I wanted to know what was going to happen next. It's always just like, who cares? It just didn't make any sense. So, looking back, the season was by far the worst season of Bones ever. Hopefully this is going to be known as the worst season of Bones, because hopefully next season is better than this one. But it was obviously worse than all of the seasons. But I will say that it was sort of in decline at the end of season 10. Like, it felt like season 10 should have been where it ended. Like, it felt like it was on its way out. And then the fact that they tried to pick it back up in season 11 really didn't help at all. It sort of made it like, it's not really working right now. So we do have a season 12. I don't know when it starts, but now I want to find out about Zach Addy. So I hate the fact that they had to end it like that, to where I don't know any of Addy's motivations. I don't know anything about how he got out or any of this stuff. I don't know any of that. All we know is Zach Addy is back. that's kind of frustrating in and of itself, but not a bad ending. It was a good reveal. I wish we could have found out a little bit more about him before the season ended. So those are my thoughts on this episode and the season in whole. I guess if I were to do a best and worst of the season, I would say best episode was obviously this last one. The worst episode was. I'm going to have to give it a toss up between the fantasy football episode, because who kills over fantasy football, and then the acapella episode, because it was just so stupid and pointless. So those are my best and worst episodes. Best moment of the season, I would have to say probably this, the last part of this episode where they realized it was Zach Addy. That was the best moment. The worst moment, oh, so many bad moments. Probably the one. Most of what Hodgins went through with his pouty mopey phase was really frustrating. I'd say the most. Oh no, I know which one. There was an episode in the first half of the season. I can't remember which one it was, but there was an episode where they were in a Toyota, whatever. I can't remember what it's called. They were driving in it, and then Brennan starts talking about how great the car is, and then she is pressing stuff on the steering wheel, they're zooming in. It was a straight up commercial inside of the episode. That was the worst moment of this season. If you want to have a commercial about it with your characters, that's fine, but to actually put it in your episode is shameless and just really pissed me off. So that was the worst moment for me. So those are my best and worst of the season. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. We can talk about it, discuss stuff. If there's anything I missed that you would like to discuss, let me know. Leave a like and subscribe for future Bones reviews, and let's hope this next season is better. So I'll see you at the next review. Peace out.